Hi kids, I'm Michael Bain, and this is Triggered, coming to you, of course, from Dragon House Studios, or well, outside Dragon House Studios. At the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains, I'd like to point out that we have the only television show with our own pack of mule deer that live here. Everybody's a director. This week, we're going to look at one of the great iconic guns in America. One of the things that you see here in our gun culture is we do have iconic guns, guns that take on a meaning maybe beyond their simple utilitarian use. Of course, the first one that comes to mind is Dirty Harry's Model 29 Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum. Do you feel lucky, punk? But Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood, also created a second iconic gun in his movie Sudden Impact, and that was the Automag in 44 Automag, essentially a rimless 44 Magnum to run in a semi-auto. The Automags were always quirky, always expensive, always hard to find. So what happens when a modern entrepreneur says, man, those guns are so cool, I'm going to bring them back? Well, let's meet my friend Patrick Henry III and the new Automag. Had to be a time in your past, Patrick, when you were a perfectly normal person, right?
Yeah.
And then one morning you got up and you said, man, those Automags are incredible guns. And maybe somebody should step up and build a new one. And maybe I could do that. Could you just give me a quick summation of how you went from normal guy to obsessed Automag manufacturer?
I had a good friend that worked for Heckler and Koch in charge of military sales, and we did a lot of projects together. He lived in Switzerland, and a lot of times he needed something from the U.S. because he collected a lot of guns. And he called me and said, I need some parts for a baby Automag and a regular Automag. Can you find them for me? So he sent me what he wanted. I came up with Larry Grossman, and he had all the parts out in California. And so I told him what I wanted, and he said, I can get you the parts. He said, but actually, we would like to sell everything. And I said, I don't know, what is everything? And so he said, I'll send you a spreadsheet. So he sent me a list of all the parts they had, and I thought, shoot, I could probably put together, there were about 500 frames. I thought, well, I can put together 400 or 500 guns, sell them, and move on to the next project. I went to the Automated Technology Expo show at the Javits Center in New York, and I thought, I took everything I knew about Automag, and I went by the different booths and said, today, if you were going to make this frame, this frame, whatever, how would you do it? And it's differently than in the 1970s. And so I got a lot of good feedback from that. And I thought, well, yeah, I got the advantage of 40 years. We can take advantage of better materials and better manufacturing processes so we can start building the gun. But I really was just going to assemble the parts I had and make the parts I was short. That's kind of where the evolution of the Automag started, because I never owned an Automag. I didn't know anything about it. And I quickly found out it had a lot of issues or shortcomings. And the Automag community was pretty tolerant of those shortcomings. And I just felt like I couldn't feel good about just making a copy of the original Automag and ship it out there. So I end up meeting some people that knew a lot about gun design, and one in particular worked for Smith & Wesson and Beretta and had a number of gun patents. And he was retired, and we started connecting, and he said, I'll help you with it. So pretty soon he was working full time and coming up with different ideas about how to improve the different shortcomings of Automag. The biggest concern I had was when we heard that it would fire out a battery. We never could figure out exactly why. And Tim Bell did some experiments and found out that the firing pin was actually too heavy. He researched all the history of Automag and found the original firing pin weighed 65 grains, but the one that was sold weighed 75 grains. And apparently along the way, they thought there was a problem and that would be solved by a heavier firing pin. And once they went to the heavier firing pin, it didn't solve the problem, but they never changed back. He created a test where you could take a cartridge, drop it in the chamber, leave the magazine out, and pull the bolt back and release it. And we put dummy primers in there, and you could see where it dented the primer. Thought, well, why don't we make the firing pin out of titanium? And we did. And instead of weighing 75, we weighed about 43 grains. But it proved to be a little bit unreliable. So we finally bumped it up to 55 grains, and that seemed to be the solution for it. I hate to mention safety, because to date, I've never found anybody that can tell me where somebody that shot a gun, I shot an automatic out of battery, that was injured, but the guns were injured. And so it basically permanently damaged the gun. But this is what they call the hot press. And you can see the little bend right here.
Yeah.
And it actually tapers up here. So they put the frame, I think they heat the frame after it cools to like 1100 degrees, and they put it in this press, and it presses it back to the correct dimensions.
Yeah.
And this was the first ball safety tappet. That's the one that had the ball bearing in
I
it.
figured I'd take you guys a video. This shows the ball bearing on top of a cut back safety tappet, but you can see. I'm gonna tell you what, this is the slickest thing I've ever felt.
And that's the normal safety tappet. You see it has that point
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And this is the actual ball safety tappet. This is the comparison between the original automatic and our new automatic with the improved bolt and the ball safety tappet.
Okay, here's my original North Hollywood. And I'm gonna start slow. I cannot pull it back from a slow start. Now you can snatch them and they'll work. Here's the modified rotation pin that only runs off of one side of the helix. This is
big difference.
Extraordinary. Truly is. You know, anybody can take one of these things and yank it back, but how about this? I'm not having to yank it back. You just lost 50% of the pressure it takes to rack this pistol back.
And this is an 8-round gun. Not sure what. Oh, this is Tim Bell. He's shooting 4 magazines back to back.
Magazine number 3. Wow, that barrel's hot. Magazine number 4.
That's probably more rounds that's ever been fired through an automag in its entire history.
Yeah. And this was the joke I put in there for California. This is, I actually put on, we cut this with our laser engraver, and finally we put California compliant. So this is a California compliant automatic.
One of the things I wanted to show you here is what kind of challenges an entrepreneur like Patrick Henry faces when he wants to bring back an iconic gun. Obviously, we don't have time here to go through 4.5, 5 years worth of agony like Patrick and his engineering team did. But when we come back, we're going to continue looking at this gun. And the good news is we're maybe 3 or 4 months from full production. Stay with us. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Ammo Man. Now offering $10 off any order of $150 or more with the promo code TRIGGERED. Tandem Cross, making good guns even better. Lipsy's and their wonderful Guns of the Month. Lucid Optics, on target, under budget. And Franklin Armory, creating some of the most innovative guns in America. I'm Michael Bain. Welcome back to Triggered and our very special look at the Herculean task of bringing back the Automag, Dirty Harry's second iconic pistol. Let's head over to Patrick Henry and talk more about the challenges of bringing this gun back to life.
So important things happened. One, we found the weak point, and the second, a lot of the critical parts were made from cast, and they had porosity issues. And so we decided to mill from solid stock rather than, that's our cocking piece being formed. I didn't know this, but anytime you have a right angle, like where the bolt connected to the cocking piece, all the pressure is on the two corners. That's what causes it to break. So where we can, we change right angles to dovetails. And so we make a tapered surface, and now all that force is applied over a much larger area, and so it's not as likely to break. Tim Bell does not do drawing. He has an idea, he goes to his machine, he has his own machine shop, and he just makes it up in his mind and goes makes the part and puts it in the gun, and amazingly it shoots. And then we have to go back and reverse engineer it to figure out how to make it in production. But this is his idea on taking the magazine stack and making this point here that uses the pressure of the ammo to rotate the bolt in place. Mm-hmm. And that's in the lock position, that's in the unlock position. And this, another problem we found with the Automag was what we call bolt bounce. This is a high-speed video, and you'll see when the bolt closes, it doesn't close and lock like it should. It bounces and then closes on the second go round. So we modified the gun so it doesn't do the bounce. And then in the original Automag, this was welded on, this top was welded on. These two pieces were welded together, and that was welded on. Well, we make the front half of the gun out of this block of material. So that one piece makes that one piece makes this, and then we thread the two together. So there's no welds and there's nothing to come apart because they're made from one block of material. This had a bad habit of separating. They laser welded them together, but they just wouldn't hold up to the force over time. We filmed the cartridge coming out of the magazine going in, and what would happen when the bolt hit it, the nose would dive down and hit into the feed ramp, and drag that lead tip would drag up the feed ramp, and sometimes not feed, but even when it did, it created a lot of friction. And so we made the magazine, we could see where the tip of the bullet was striking the feed ramp. Right. And so then we raised the overall height of the magazine about 110 thousandths. And so now the cartridge would go straight across. And this is actually not where the tip of the bullet hits, but where the ogive, the slant side. So you can even hear how much smoother it is whenever we made this modification. That's just a video where we weld. So we had to build our own magazines, and that's the automatic welder for welding the magazines. And this was the video from this is a still shot. When I sold the first 30 guns, one of the complaints I got was that you couldn't see the front sight because this was all smooth. And so what we did is cut serrations in it. And these were the three options I had, and we chose this. So now it would reflect light. They would like smoke it with a cigarette lighter or paint it with a magic marker. And the recoil spring, the rear sight pin would start to march out. So we cut the pin with a little hole in, and we put a ball and spring that locks it in place so it doesn't, but if you need to, you can tap it out. That's one of Tim Bell's drawings here. And this, another complaint we got was the gun took a few hundred rounds to break in, a brand new gun. And so Tim told me at Smith & Wesson and Beretta, they had cyclers. And I said, I don't know what a cycler is. He said, a mechanical device that marries in the parts. And so we built this. And then
it works.
The original frames were cast with a hole here, but if it was a little bit off, it would make the bolt not perfectly aligned. And so we made this solid, and we just mill it exactly straight after the frame gets here. That's our case. And we made a challenge coin with the Automag logo on one side and Dirty Harry's badge, number 2211, is on the opposite. This is where Tim made a cutaway of an Automag to see how everything worked, and the magazine too.
Would you do it again?
Now that I'm here, yes, but there were several times along the way, if I could have not done it, I would have bowed out.
Now that you've shot an Automag, and I know you've shot a lot of different iterations as you worked forward with it, can you explain the appeal of that gun?
Yeah, I really can't. I'm not a collector, and so, but the people I talk to people that own 50 or 100 Automags, and it's intriguing to me how much they associate it with Americana and things that are beautiful, like the P-51 Mustang or the Ford Cobra Shell. They kind of put it mentally in that group of kind of unique items, and incredible how strong the attachment is to the Automag. It's hard to describe the following that the Automag has.
Now you've had people signed up. They've signed up for the newsletter way back when, and your first run of Automags is you've already sold them, the first ones that come out the door. How close are you to quote unquote production?
All we need are good frames.
What most people don't understand is a gun like the Automag, which was a very specialized gun built by basically a very small company with relatively limited resources.
Mm-hmm.
It was never truly a debugged final product. You know, if you look at the production of Automag during its original life with the Sanford family, it was a work in process. Every one was a little bit different. So people sometimes look at a gun and they say, well, you know, that's a finished product. But in fact, the more specialized a gun is, the longer it takes for it to be what we might think of as a final product. That you know, it is a work in process. And those of us who get it, I didn't have an Automag early on because I'd had to sell my car. But people don't realize that in a sense, we're the beta testers. And in this case, you're the beta tester. You have, in essence, over this period of time, re-engineered the way the Automag runs. You've changed the entire way it runs, and you brought it forward into a 21st century manufacturing product. Now, people hearing this are they're going for their wallet, and they want to know what the level is on their Visa card. How close are you to production?
Well, like I said, we outsourced the production of 30 or so Automags. And that's where we learned a lot, because they basically went out to fanboys that would give us feedback. And based on that feedback, we realized we need to make some changes. And we've gotten some frames in from it. We switched casting houses. We spent a year and a half with a different casting company, and they really struggled with getting us good frames. We got a few out of that, but not any significant amount. And then we moved to a new company that seems to really know what they're doing. And they took the frame mold and stripped off everything the old company had put on it and just cast a handful of frames just to see what they need to correct. And when they got through, I said, why don't you send us a few of those frames? So they sent us 2 of the frames, and I took them to my engineer and my machinist, and both of them said, my God, these are the best frames I've seen. These are far better than any one we got in the last year and a half from the other company. And my engineer said, I think I can modify the things that are wrong. The magazine well was a little too tight. He said, I can file that out. And the recoil spring rods, they curved upwards at the front, but he said, I don't think it's too bad that I can actually drill the recoil spring rod holes without it breaking through. And turned out it did. So when you see videos of Automatic, it's those, and they were on the side, it was written scrap. It was engraved inside these are scrap frames. And so they work really well. So that gave me a lot of confidence that when they actually get the finished frames, and we should get some of those in the end of next week. This is a small run, and because of the COVID, it's created tremendous slowdowns. And normally if we got the frames in next week, and we were happy with them, I could say, send me 100 more frames, and it'd take them about 3 weeks. But now it's probably more like 2 or 3 months, unless we come out with, I'm trying to come out with a workaround for that, but we have everything we need to build a couple hundred guns except for frames.
It takes an amazing amount of perseverance and not a small amount of money to take an iconic gun like the Automag, which, as we said, was never truly a refined product, and bring it up to 21st century standards. So my friend Patrick Henry is definitely to be complimented. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what's going to happen to my Visa card when I order one of these? Well, it's going to take at least a $3,500 hit. If you want a Dirty Harry model 8-inch barrel, you're going to go for about $4 grand. If I can put that in perspective, Wilson Combat Les Bear 1911s in that price range, because we're dealing with a truly iconic gun. Next week on Triggered, something to keep your eyes open for. We've been talking a lot on various forums, things about 9mm revolvers, Rugers, Tauruses, and Charter Arms. I happened to be talking to Nick Eckler, who is the president of Charter Arms, last week. Great guy, super knowledgeable about the industry, and a good friend. And it occurred to me that years back, a decade back maybe, I got a Pit Bull, which is a Charter Arms 9mm revolver. Now, this particular Charter Arms 9mm revolver is loaded, so let's be careful. But what's missing? Gosh, no moon clip. It's set up so the 9mm rounds go straight into the cylinder and eject just like a rimmed round would. So next week, we're going to spend a little time with the Charter Arms ringing it out, and it's going to be fun. I'm Michael Bain. This is Triggered. You can, of course, find us on michaelbain.tv. You can find us on YouTube. Check under your couch. We may be under there as well. And hey, before we shut this down, maybe I should fire these rounds.